What's happening, boxing fans? It is Dr. Bring It. What's happening, guys? Hey, I just cut a video. I just talked about Logan Paul and Mayweather squaring up this Sunday. But for this video, since I'm already sitting here, I'm just going to string along a bunch of videos. I want to talk to you guys about this matchup between Manny Pacquiao and Errol Spence Jr. This is probably a dream matchup that we never thought would happen. Here we are, Manny Pacquiao really approaching his absolute end of his career. Okay, I know that he retired in the past and he came back again, but he came back with a vengeance. A lot of people thinking that, oh, Manny Pacquiao, he ducked this person or ducked that person, whatever. The boxing business is about matchups. It's about what is trending, what resonates with the boxing community, what will potentially bring the most money. Okay, there's a lot of stuff that are going on behind the scenes that we have no clue that's happening. They're trying to negotiate these things. There has to be some interest, okay? But here we are in 2021. Manny Pacquiao announces, boom, he's going to be fighting Errol Spence Jr. Now, what are some of the critiques out there? Well, Manny Pacquiao knows that Errol Spence Jr. got into an accident, and the way that he fought Danny Garcia, he saw some holes, and he wasn't the normal Errol Spence Jr. beast. So now he's going in there because he's going to take advantage. I understand, but you know what? I kind of don't listen to that noise. The fact of the matter is, Errol Spence Jr. is still a beast. He still has his boxing IQ. His fight against Danny Garcia, although, yeah, we wanted to see a knockout, but who knocked down Danny Garcia? Anyone? He fought Thurman. Thurman was blasting him. Didn't go down. Danny Garcia, even though many people might not look at him as an elite, but the man can box. He's up there. So pretty soon he's going to be, I think, he's going to be a gatekeeper that everyone should go through in order for them to graduate to the next level, right? There's levels in boxing, right? But here we are. Errol Spence Jr. is now going to be taking on Manny Pacquiao. What do you think is going to happen? So let's talk about this. Let's talk about their style. Manny Pacquiao obviously uses his feet. He's a rhythm boxer, right? He likes to put his face out there, right? Tries to trap, cause his opponent to miss, and then he goes in with some counter punching. This is what Manny Pacquiao does. A lot of feinting with his feet. He goes in, moves his head, boom, okay? This is what he does, and he's great at it, okay? How is that going to stack up against Errol Spence Jr.? Well, Errol Spence Jr., it would be kind of silly for him to get into a duke 'em out, a brawl with Manny Pacquiao. Given that Manny Pacquiao, yes, he's definitely the more significantly shorter fighter, but he's more grounded and he's going to be punching in an upward motion, okay, to connect with Errol Spence. But Errol Spence Jr., he does have a low stance and wide stance, but again, he's still punching down. In order for him to connect with Manny Pacquiao, he really has to squat down and throw that punch, okay? But Manny Pacquiao is coming from a lower trajectory, and he can use his connection with the earth, with the ring, and punch like he usually does. That's where he generates his power from, his legs. So Errol Spence Jr. is going to have to figure out what his strategy is. How is he going to do? We know that he can bang with the best of them. We know that he could get into a dogfight like he did with Porter, right? Is he going to want to do that against Manny Pacquiao? Manny Pacquiao can throw 8 to 10 punch combinations. Does Errol Spence Jr. want to get into that kind of a fight? Again, I have to remind you, yeah, no one thought that Thurman was going to get knocked down by Manny Pacquiao, but he did in the first round. So is it possible that Manny Pacquiao can string together a nice combination that will shake up Errol Spence Jr.? It's possible. It's possible. This is boxing. And we're not just talking about some guy off the street. This is a future Hall of Famer, Manny Pacquiao, arguably one of the greatest of all time. Again, I have to remind you that this is 4 decades as an active champion. Who can say that? Boxing is a marathon. If you want to talk about legacy, it's not just a sprint. Okay? But anyway, getting back to Errol Spence, what is his strategy going to be? If I were Errol Spence Jr., I would take the same strategy that he had with Danny Garcia. Keep him on the outside. Keep him at the end of his jab. Not allowing Manny Pacquiao to come in. He has to mirror his footwork. Manny Pacquiao comes in, he's got to gain that timing. That's what Marquez did. Marquez was gaining his timing. He was able to gain his rhythm to connect with Manny Pacquiao. Errol Spence Jr. has to do the same thing. He's going to need to make sure that he keeps the distance control in check. But Errol Spence Jr. has that capability, okay? Now, he didn't do that against Porter. He wanted a dogfight against Porter. So that's the thing. Errol Spence Jr., it seems to me that he is influenced by his opponent. If that's the case, then we might see more of a Manny Pacquiao fight instead of an Errol Spence fight. Now here's the thing. Let me take this back. Let me give you a different angle here. Manny Pacquiao versus Mayweather, okay? Was that fight more of a Manny Pacquiao fight? Or was that fight more of a Mayweather Jr. fight? That fight was more of a Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight, right? Manny Pacquiao wasn't able to string together, 8 to 10 punch combinations. You know why? Because Floyd didn't just stand there. He backed up. He moved to the side. He tied up Manny Pacquiao. And actually, I rewatched that fight not too long ago, just a couple of days ago, just to see. And I have to say that Manny Pacquiao really was not tied up that much. It wasn't excessive, guys. It wasn't excessive. Did you guys watch the Devin Haney fight this past weekend? That was excessive, rounds 11 and 12. But guess what? He lost rounds 11 and 12. But he did enough to win. So, yes, he didn't get points taken away, but he certainly didn't win those rounds. So, back to Spence and Pacquiao. What is Spence going to do? Is Spence going to get into a dogfight? Or is he going to keep Pacquiao on the outside? If he keeps Manny Pacquiao on the outside like he did against Danny Garcia, then he wins on the card. I honestly don't see him knocking out Manny Pacquiao. Can he? Absolutely. He can absolutely knock out Manny Pacquiao. But is it likely? No, it's not. They're most likely going to go to round 12. And it's going to be a decision. But it really depends on how Spence wants to control Manny Pacquiao. In order for Manny Pacquiao to win, Manny Pacquiao has to come in. He has to come in. Manny Pacquiao is not going to fight an outside fight because that's not what Manny Pacquiao does. Manny Pacquiao wins getting in with his feet, different angles, and a lot of combinations. That's how Manny Pacquiao fights. Now, for some reason, if miraculously all of a sudden he's going to change his strategy and try to fight Errol Spence Jr. on the outside, I don't see that happening. That's not Manny Pacquiao, right? So that's my take on it. I think it's going to be an easy night, honestly, for Errol Spence Jr. if he stays on the outside. Is he going to be able to do it as effectively as Mayweather? Maybe not. I think I put it out there. I said that I don't think there's a more disciplined fighter than Floyd Mayweather Jr. But Errol Spence Jr., he showed that discipline against Danny Garcia. So I think we might see a disciplined Errol Spence Jr., which is really bad news for Manny Pacquiao. But hey, if Manny Pacquiao gets his way and they go slugfest, then there could be a split decision and it could go towards Manny Pacquiao. So it really all depends on what kind of fight Errol Spence Jr. brings on that night. So let me know what you guys think. If you want to give me comments, please do. I'll be really interested to hearing what you guys think about this fight. And that's it. Awesome talking to you guys. We'll talk to you soon.